Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. This is the next in our series of needed units for version 3 of Global War 1936 to 1945. This video probably get France in at the end there, but it's going to start with the Commonwealth. So what was the Commonwealth? Well, that's what you're looking at here is Great Britain. You know, like there's England and Scotland and Ireland. Wales is in there. So that's the home country of Great Britain. Now, they were one of the last great empires as far as human civilization or Western civilization. They colonized much of the world. And because of that, this makes the Commonwealth a really fun nation to play in any of these types of games, but I really like playing them in this game probably more than any other one. It's not just one country though. It's not just the UK. This is what we call the UK, is this right here, and then there's also the FEC, the Far East Command, which is centered in India, and then there's ANZAC, which was the Australia and New Zealand alliance. They kind of banded together to make themselves stronger. So when you play the Commonwealth, you play them all at once. They move together, they fight together, they defend together. So like you can have units from the UK, from the FEC, and from ANZAC attack somebody all at once, and they will all roll all at once. It's not like everything else where you only defend together. You can actually attack together. The only difference between the nations is that you purchase your units and you place your units separately. So these guys' money, the UK's money, stays in the UK, and they have to spend it, and they have to put it at UK factories. FEC, same thing. They have their own income, they spend their own money, and they have to put that stuff at their factory. And the same with ANZAC, and their factory is in Sydney. You could build another one, but that's probably going to be the only one. You don't get a lot of money as ANZAC. So anyway, let's just take a look at what we've got here. So you've been looking at this long enough. So let's just turn the camera around. There's also Canada. Now, there's not a lot of units on Canada, although Canada did play a pretty big role in World War II. Bigger than the nation was as far as population. These units that you see here, these are the units that go down on the build chart at the start of the game. So that's why I've put them aside like that. So you've seen the UK, you've seen Canada, Gibraltar down there. That's another big space on the board. Both Gibraltar and the Suez Canal down there, where beside Egypt there. Those are worth bonuses, and they're also, you can keep people from going through them, your enemies. So it's a big deal. Like you can lock Italy into the Mediterranean, or lock Germany out of the Mediterranean. Let's go down to the other side of the board. You can kind of control the play down in this area down here by having those two places, that one and that one. But if you lose them, then then they can also be turned against you. So I've always put a lot of importance on those two places, Gibraltar and Egypt. And then you have there's a factory down here in South Africa. See, the British, they colonized all of North America there, except for small pocket French, like there's Quebec up there. But the Americans, they originally were British, and of course they had their own revolution and kicked the British out. So only Canada is still aligned at the point of World War II here. Although they're still allies, right, with the Americans. And then Africa, they had a lot of Africa down here. And then the Far East Command. So this is your a separate country in the game. The sort of separate is sort of not separate. One of the things that you learn right away is that when you're developing weapons, like you can all put money in, all three nations can put money in but all the weapons have to be placed in your home country. That's your home country for the FEC and for Anzac. They don't have their own home country. Like none of that territory there is home country of the FEC. Now the rules in both version 2 and version 3 say that Anzac here, like their home country, is Australia and New Zealand, but they still say that the UK is the boss. I'm going to ask Will about that. Will is the rules guy. I'm pretty darn sure though that you could never put a major factory down here because it's not home country. You could never put a capital ship down here. You'll never and you'll never be able to place your developed weapons down here. The only place you can put weapons on is in your home country, and like I said, that's the home country up there, those 4 territories. And it is 4 territories on this map. Excuse me, like it was only 3 territories on the version 2 map, but in this map it separates London from the rest of South England there. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, with being all over the world like this, here, let me just show you a bit of this over here. With being all over the world like this, and having a lot of boats to begin the game and a lot of land units to begin the game, what it does is that it opens you up to a lot of different strategies, a lot of different ways to play the game. And so you'll notice when I let you know how many things you need, it sounds like it's inflated. For one thing, like I'm going to separate the UK and FEC in one list and Anzac in another list, because though they're 2 different colors, but you could actually play all 3 of them with the same color. Like if you didn't have gray units, you could just use those, or you could be like my friend Rank Carcass and you could have a separate color for these guys. But anyway, the reason the UK units are so large is because there is 2 countries, and also because there's a lot of different things you can do with them. Like you're never going to use all the units, but are you going to go heavy on the land units in this game? Like, is it going to be a big battle in Africa and in Asia, or are you going to buy a lot of boats? You know, are you going to buy a lot of planes? Like, you kind of need a lot of everything as for the UK, because you just don't know when a game begins what's going to happen in the game and what your strategy is going to be. Germany and Japan and Italy, they kind of have the initiative in the game, right? Like they're the ones that started the war in World War II, and they're going to be the ones that start the war here as well. So you kind of got to react to what they're doing, right? You can't just say, okay, before the game you start off and you got in your mind what you're going to do and you just go ahead and do it. Like, you know, that's not going to work if because they're not going to cooperate with you, right? They're going to do what they want to do, and so you kind of have to react to them because they're more powerful nations in this game. And actually, you know, like when you look at all the units, UK or the Commonwealth probably has more units than everybody on the board, but they're so spread out and they've got 3 capitals to protect. And, you know, like it's, let's just say that the jobs that they have to do in this game are so much that they're spread out. And so, unlike Germany, which is concentrated into 4 territories, that their home country, plus one that's just slightly off to the side, you know, like they've got all their units in one place. And so it's more like a cohesive unit, whereas the UK is just all over the place. You know, their units can get trapped, like a couple of units out here, a couple of units over there, you know, like they can get overwhelmed, right? So anyway, that just gives you a lot of options. And you look down here, this is the Netherlands East Indies. So their home country, the Netherlands East Indies, you see that orange guy up there, and there's 3 orange boats over there, just on this side of the UK. Well, that's their home country. And what happens is the Commonwealth, when somebody attacks the Dutch, whether they attack them in Europe or whether they attack them down here, or just even declare war on them, then any remaining territories that haven't been captured, they go to the UK. So the UK will collect all the money I think there's something like $11 or 11 IPP in total, maybe more than that. I'm not sure. Anyway, whatever is left over, the Commonwealth gets, and they can divide it up any way they want. Like you could give all of it to Anzac or all of it to the UK, or split it up 3 ways between the 3 of them. You know, it's totally up to the UK player what they want to do. Anyway, let's just get into what I've written down or typed out for them. So I've got 30 infantry, and you don't have to do this, but I've kind of done it. Like here, I've got these East Indian guys, right? These are my FEC guys. Those are my infantry over here. My militia are all the same, but my infantry are different. So, for instance, the British, they're your typical British soldier, right? But the FEC are going to be using those Indian troops for them. But you don't have to do that. You can just use all the same sculpts if you want, like all British sculpts, right? You're also going to need 20 militia, and that's probably minimum that you're going to need, because just starting the game, just right now on the board, the opening setup in 1936, there's 15 militia on the board when you count up between the UK and the FEC. And remember, if you're going to use 2 different colors, that like you can shave some of them off the number that I'm giving you, and then allot the other ones to a different color for the FEC. So 20 militia, that's what I have. Actually, I think I have 21, and I haven't run out yet. But that I've also got some extra militia chips in case I do, right? Another thing is I've got 8 colonial infantry. Now, what a colonial infantry is just a regular infantry that you can build in a space that has a point value. Let me just grab one of these things here. Okay, so like here, I put a lot of colonial infantry when I play the UK down in Africa. So there's a space there, there's a space there. Any space that has a point value that the British own. Normally you'd have to put infantry at a factory, right? Well, colonial infantry, you can put wherever there's a point value. Now I'm using these guys. I've got these colonial infantry, but again, you can just use regular British sculpts. I've got them on these chips here, but you don't have to do that either. All you have to do is just put a dude there, and just call them colonial infantry, because they don't do anything different. They're just infantry that you build at a non-factory site. You can also build them at a factory site. So like here, there's a factory here that has a capacity of 1. You could build a tank here and one of these guys here, because the tank takes up the factory. This guy here gets to go here because it's worth 2 IPP there. So because it has a dollar value, you can put a colonial infantry there, and you could do 2 of those on per turn, right? But again, like I said, you don't need to buy separate sculpts. I'm just a little bit crazy that way. I likes to play with little plastic army men, right? So that's why I've searched out the world and found some colonial infantry, and I'm using them. Anyway, so I've got 8 colonial infantry. You can also use those for the FEC. You can't use them for Anzac. They're not for Anzac. They're just for the UK or for the FEC. I've also got 5 mountain infantry, 5 airborne, 5 marines, 5 Gurkhas. Now this is a new unit in the game for version 3. You see this guy up here, you might recognize him if you've been a follower of mine for a while on my channel, because I used to have these guys before I got the Indian troops. I used to use these guys, they're Gurkhas. I used to use them as my British infantry in India for the FEC, but I've painted their base green like that. They're a new unit, so they have the regular stats as your infantry. So you attack 2, defend 4, movement of 1, and cost. I think they cost 4 actually. So those are kind of like colonial infantry in that you could put them anywhere you want in the FEC territory here. So any of these places here that's connected to Calcutta, you wouldn't be able to put them over here, for instance, in Hong Kong, because that's not connected over here, right? It's got to be here. It's got to be connected to Calcutta. So, and that's one thing. The other thing is Nepal here. That's the place in blue. The Nepal either has to be neutral or in Allied hands. So if Russia or if the Axis own Nepal, then you can't build Gurkhas, because these Gurkhas, they're Nepalese soldiers. What they are is a mountain infantry. So they will have the same stats as a mountain infantry. In other words, you'll get +1 in mountains if you're on defense, and they won't suffer a mountain penalty on offense, just like a mountain infantry. The other thing about the Gurkha is, you see this stuff over here. We'll get a little bit closer. You see where the dots are here. That is jungle. That's what they're showing for jungle. I don't know if that's going to change or not. Remember, this isn't final art on this board right now. This is close to it, but it's not final art. So in the jungle, your Gurkhas are going to be first strike. So they'll get to roll before everybody else, kind of like your artillery does, right? Or your submarines. But also, like if you're fighting the Japanese in the jungle, you got to remember that the Japanese infantry are also first strike in jungles. So those are the only units that are in jungle. You're not used to jungle. There is no jungle in version 2, but it's just the Japanese infantry and the Gurkhas that will have first strike in the jungle like that. And there's other rules to get involved in jungle, but we're not going to get into that now. That's not what this video is about. So Gurkhas, I'm saying 5 of those. You could probably get away with less or more. It doesn't matter. This guy isn't on the board to begin with. I just put him in Nepal because I wanted to show him to you. He's a new unit, and because they come from Nepal. That's why I put him on the board there. So 10 motorized infantry. Again, like I said, there's lots of units in this because they're all over the board, right? 10 mechanized infantry, 10 light tanks, 10 to 15 medium tanks. I've got 5 cavalry, 5 heavy tanks, 5 advanced mechanized infantry, 10 to 15 artillery, 5 advanced artillery, 5 to 10 AA artillery, so that's your anti-aircraft guns, 10 submarines, 5 to 10 advanced submarines, 3 transport planes, 5 medium bombers, and then with fighters and tactical bombers, I've got 12 fighters and 10 tactical bombers. That 12 fighters is a minimum because it can start adding up after a while, especially when you once you start playing this game and realize, and with the V3 rules, these rules are going to be different. The biggest rule change in the book is going to come in the Battle of the Atlantic over here. In version 2, the escorts have the advantage over the raiding submarines, right? And so it was kind of unfair to the Germans. Like they start off, like they've got lots of subs and they can do a decent job, but it doesn't take long for the British to run them down with their destroyers and stuff like that, right? It's just too easy to kill subs. But in version 3, it's kind of swung the opposite way. Like it's almost impossible to kill a sub, except if you have a carrier-based aircraft or an aircraft on combat air patrol. So you're going to have to learn how to spread them out and how to use them. Otherwise, the Germans are just going to eat your lunch on you. Like they're just going to be taking tons of money off you, right? So you're going to need lots of aircraft. So I've got 12 fighters and 10 tactical bombers. You might even need more than that. I don't know. But make sure you have lots of those. But if you have Pacific and Europe 1940, like I've said before, you should have those games to start with this game. That's your base set. Then those guys, like the Americans, are in both of those games. So you're going to have tons of UK units, and that's good. You're going to need them. Okay, 5 strategic bombers. They're actually the only one that starts with a strategic bomber in the game. You can't build strategic bombers until later in the game. I can't remember what the date is, but you see the one on London down there. That's the only strategic bomber that starts the game off. So 5 of those, 5 heavy bombers, 5 jet fighters. You might even need more than that. Depends on if you develop jet fighters. Jet fighters I found a really good unit for the British. Any kind of fighters in the home territory over there, because when you're doing amphibious assaults, let's just take a look over here. When you're doing amphibious assaults, it's the same as version 2 in that only your infantry gets off on the beach, right? Your tanks, your artillery, all that stuff, they stay on the boat until the second round, and that's assuming that your infantry survive. However, your planes do get to take part with your infantry, right? So you put an infantry on Britain here, and you're ferrying dudes across with your boats. Then planes become really valuable, right? Because they're taking part in that first round, and you're not having to buy a bunch of carriers to do it. So developing jet power with them and developing long-range aircraft with them is a really good idea, and that gives them here, let's look over here for a while. That gives them some good punch up there in the fight against Germany, and they're good everywhere, right? Like you could fly them down to Africa and even over to India, but you can't build them in India, right? You have to build them in the UK because they're a research and development weapon. So where are we here? 10 to 12 heavy cruisers. They start between the 2 of them. Let me just see here. Can't remember it. I had the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They start with 5. So 10 to 12 is about right. You probably find that you build other things before you build cruisers. I think in version 2 there was even more cruisers than that. But you never know. You might build that many in this. Just like the Japanese that we took a look at already, you're going to need lots of boats for them, and you might never use that many cruisers until that one game, right? It's like I said a couple minutes ago, you don't know when the game starts if you're going to have a ground battle with the UK or if you're going to have a naval battle. They're open for anything in this game, so be prepared for anything. And like I said, you get both of those Axis and Allies games, you're going to have lots of units, so lots of heavy cruisers. So 5 to 10 light cruisers. You start the game, I think, in the 39 scenario with 5 light cruisers. So 5 is your minimum, and you might want to go with more than that. In 36 here, what do we got? There's only 2 light carriers on the board and 1 more in the build queue. So, like you're almost at the 5 already. So 5 to 10 of those. What I do, like if you get yourself a 10 pack, you paint a couple of them gray, and there you go. You've got a bunch of light carriers, and then you've got your light carriers for Anzac as well, because you're not going to need 5 Anzac light carriers. You're just never going to get that much money, right, for them. 5 to 10 light cruisers. Again, I think you start with 5 light cruisers in the 39 scenario, so you're going to need lots of those. 5 battle cruisers. You start with 1 of them on the board. 12 destroyers. That should be minimum. I think you start with 8 destroyers in the game here in 36. 5 torpedo boat destroyers. Now on the board here right now there is I think there's 2 of them. There's 1 there. I think you start with 2 of them. Yeah, but Britain and Germany are the 2 nations that are most likely to get neutral boats. Like if Germany was to attack Yugoslavia here, for instance, then Great Britain gets that boat. And it's entirely possible that Germany is not going to attack this boat because they're probably not in the Mediterranean, right? They might be, but they're probably not. So when they attack Yugoslavia, they're probably not attacking this boat. I think I've gotten that boat a couple of times, being the British player. So there you go. There's one right there, right? And right up there, there's that one for Poland. So when Poland gets attacked, you get that one there. So I've said you should have 3 extras of the torpedo boat destroyers for that reason. 5 to 10 tank destroyers, 5 self-propelled artillery, 2 coastal submarines. You only start with 1 in the game, but you know there's this one here with the Netherlands, and you could be getting that one as well. Although that one will probably be attacked when the Netherlands is attacked, so you might not need it. And there's not that many out there. There's just that one and the Swedish one as far as neutrals go. But having 1 extra is not such a bad idea. 3 coastal defense ships. Now you start with 1 of them, and like I said, you're more likely to get neutrals than everybody else on the board. Even more so than Germany, because Germany is going to attack more neutrals than you are, for sure. It costs money for the Allies to attack neutrals, and it doesn't cost the Germans anything to attack them. So it's more likely that you will get the most boats out of anybody for the UK. 5 battleships, 3 fast battleships, 2 heavy battleships, 4 fleet carriers. So those are all capital ships, right? There is one of the points that's available to the British is in the Mediterranean here. If they have twice as many capital ships as the Italians do, and the Italians are probably going to have at least 2 capital ships in there, so you're going to want lots of capital ships, probably at least 3 or 4 of them for the British by the end of the game, because in order to get that point, you need to have twice as many capital ships in the Mediterranean as the Italians have. You might have wiped out the Italians by then. They might have wiped you out by then. I don't know. But for that reason, you're going to want to have lots of capital ships. I mean, you're going to want lots of ships in general, but you're going to need capital ships. And that goes for Japan and the United States as well. They also have a point that's up for grabs in the Pacific, where if one side has twice as many capital ships as the other side, then they're going to get a victory point for that. So where are we here? So 4 fleet carriers, 5 escort carriers, that's minimum. 2 heavy carriers, 2 seaplanes, 10 transports, 5 to 10 attack transports, 4 major factories, 5 medium factories, 5 minor factories. It's quite possible you could be using a lot of factories in this game. Like you might add another minor factory here. If you're playing by the rules, you're going to have to do something like that, because you wouldn't be able to put a medium factory here unless Will changes the rules since last version that I see, where you couldn't put medium factories outside of your home territory. I'm hoping that he changes that so that you can put one there. I'll be doing it anyway, but if they don't, and if you're playing by the rules, then like you're going to be building 2 or 3 there, and you have one down here already. You probably want to build 1 and maybe even 2 there, unless you can build mediums. There's already one up there. There's a major factory in Canada, and there's only 1 major factory in London there, but I could see you putting another one over there as well. On the mainland. It just depends on how the game is going. If there's any pressure on Britain, you know what I mean? Like if they're not going, if the Germans are not going after Russia, then you're gonna have to worry. And your opponent there says, "Hey, let's play the sea lion set." Well, then you know they're coming after you, right? Anyway, so that is the UK. And the FEC, quite a lot of units, yes, but like I said, you're going to need, some games you're going to need more ships, some games you're going to need more land units, some games you're going to, actually probably all games you're going to need planes, because they work out for both of them. Now I separated Anzac down here. You don't start with much. Like you only got 3 militia, a truck, artillery, a small factory, and then 3 boats. There's a light cruiser, a destroyer, and a transport. So now remember, you can't put any research and development weapons there. So probably the most you're going to need is 12 infantry, 6 militia, 3 mountain infantry. There's a lot of mountains over here, so mountain infantry are pretty good to have. 2 airborne infantry, 4 marines. You are traveling across the water, so you know that 4 marines, that's more than you're getting of the other things, but it's more likely you could use those than the other ones, right? 3 motorized infantry. The kind of units that go 2 spaces, you're not going to need many of, right? Unless Australia gets attacked. Like if Japan attacks Australia over here, then you're going to need to cross land. But other than that, you're just landing on an island, right? And there's no place to go, right? So I generally don't buy a whole lot of units for Anzac that go 2 spaces, right? So I got 3 motorized infantry, 2 cavalry, 5 mechanized infantry, 3 light tanks, 6 medium tanks, 5 artillery, 5 anti-aircraft artillery. Now all these things are probably way more than you need, right? But you probably already own that many, so whatever you got, just throw it in the box, right? I'm just saying, like, these are as many as you could possibly need. I don't see you needing 6 tanks, but who knows? Maybe that one game where Anzac becomes a beast, right? Like they go up there and they gain a foothold here and they just start steamrolling through China. I don't know. It could happen. It's more likely though you'll be playing with boats, mostly submarines. Okay, 8 submarines. I put lots of submarines because submarines are a good thing to have. Every 2 turns you could buy yourself a submarine in the beginning of the game when you hardly got any money. So you could build up a little cache of submarines there by the time you go to war, right? And when Japan goes to attack the NEI here, then you've got some submarines to try to take down a few of their ships, right? I've got a transport plane there. Just 2 medium bombers. I doubt if you'll even buy 1, but you know, you might as well throw them on there. So when I say that, you don't worry about buying them. Like if you don't have the money, you could always take one of the UK medium bombers if you wanted to buy one with these guys. Take a UK bomber and put it on here. They all get to move at the same time anyway, right? So it doesn't really matter if it's not gray. But if you are painting units, then sure, go ahead and paint it gray, right? Where am I? 5 fighters, 5 tactical bombers, 1 strategic bomber, 5 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, 2 battle cruisers, 6 destroyers, 2 tank destroyers, 2 self-propelled artillery, 2 escort carriers, 1 seaplane, 5 transports, 2 medium factories and 2 minor factories. Like I could see making this one a medium factory here. I could see putting another minor factory, or like in biggest case scenario is you got 2 medium factories on your island here. I don't see that happening, but it could. Now, one of the things that's happening right now in a game that I'm playing, and you might be following along with that, I'm playing a game at Panzer King's house. The Americans have been able to lend-lease a ton of stuff down to Anzac here. The Japanese have just not gotten in the way of that. You know, like they just haven't put any stock into stopping that lend-lease from coming down. And part of it is inexperienced player, but the other part is that we're only playing with 3 players. And it's hard to remember to do everything in the game all over the board, right? You just get weary after a while. I'm playing all the allies, and I know how that is. It's easy to forget to do 1 thing or 2 things or 3 things when you've got 20 things to do just in the Commonwealth turn alone, right? But same thing with the Axis. Anyway, these guys are getting lots of stuff, and so that kind of thing can happen, right? And now in that game. They've got the Netherlands money, so it's possible that they could keep getting stuff from the Americans. You could get money from these guys here. Maybe they take a territory or two, and next thing you know, Anzac is getting a few bucks, right? Like, it could happen. And it's just, you know, like, that's why you have a little bit of extra stuff and a little bit of extra factories. Anyway, that is the Commonwealth. So, looking at here, there's only 35 minutes in. We've got time to do France, so I'll do France on this video as well. Okay, so it's France's turn, and don't get too hung up on France, because kind of like Global 40, France isn't in it to win it, really. They do have a bigger role in this game than they do in Global 40, but still, it's a limited role. There was actually a game that I played this past summer where France never got taken out. Not once did a foreign unit land on my home territory. That was incredible. But really, I mean, it wasn't because France was so tough. It's because he went all in on Russia, and he took Moscow. Like, on the first turn, he declared war. That was Joey. He couple of blitzes, and he was all over Moscow like a fat kid on a Smartie. But that can happen, though, you know. So what happened in that game was I found myself building ships. Not a lot of them, because France still has a limited amount of money. But, you know, like, I wasn't out of the game, you know, at the start of the war. Because usually you're going to be out of the game at the start of the war, and so you manage to build a few things, and then boom, you're gone, right? But it could happen where you last longer than that. I've seen it happen myself. So what I'm saying here, 16 infantry, 8 militia, 3 mountain infantry, 2 airborne infantry, 3 marines, 5 foreign legion. Now, foreign legion are a new unit in this game. So this is a foreign legion sculpt right here. This is from the new French set that Doug at historicalboardgaming.com has built. And I tell you, if you have that French set, like if you bought the set of French things, then you have just about everything you need to play this game. In fact, you've got 2 or 3 times more than you need to play this game if you had that French set. You would just need to fill in the blanks. And he is coming out with another French set to fill in those blanks, but that's going to be a little ways down the road. He's first going to build the set that you need for Global War 36, which is going to have lots of units, especially the newer units, and they're going to be in all of the colors. And then he's going to do a Russian set, and then I think he's going to get to the French set. But in the meantime, if you have the French set that he had already, there's just a couple of things that you need to get, like light cruisers. There's a light cruiser to start off the game. Where is it? Oh, it's in the build chart. So you know, like, there's one unit right there. You're going to want some tank destroyers. Let me just keep going through the list here. So the 5 foreign legion, 5 motorized infantry, 3 cavalry, 5 mechanized infantry, 5 light tanks, 6 medium tanks, 6 artillery, 5 anti-aircraft artillery, 1 torpedo boat destroyer, 1 coastal submarine. You're not going to need any more than that, because France does not have the ability to take part in the diplomacy expansion. And if the neutrals get attacked, there's no provision for them getting the units. The units will go to Britain. So you're not going to need more than the 1 coastal sub. Here's the 1 torpedo boat destroyer. The coastal sub is only on the 1939 starting date. I guess I could have finished what I was saying. Yeah, the foreign legion guy, he's just, his stats are regular infantry. You can build him in any French territory outside of the home country, and he's got first strike in the desert. So that's the thing about him. I wanted to make him an elite infantry, because France, they don't really have much of a punch once they get knocked out of the game. And so having a unit that could actually roll attack on 5 would have been, or sorry, attack on 3 would have been nice, to have him a 3-5 unit like some of the other elite units on the board. But I think he's just going to be 2-4 like most of the infantry units. Where were you? Coastal. Okay, 8 submarines. You're probably not going to need 8 submarines. You're probably not going to need most of this stuff. Remember, just one, the odd game where you are actually gonna use these. 1 transport plane, 2 medium bombers. You already start with one of them on Paris there. 5 fighters, 5 tactical bombers, 1 strategic bomber, 4 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, 1 battle cruiser, 6 destroyers, 5 tank destroyers, 2 self-propelled artillery, 3 battleships. You already start with 2 of them in the game. Like there's 1 on the board, and then these ones up here, those are on the build chart over there. So there's a battleship on the build chart, which you'll probably never see. Even in that game where I never lost Paris, I still didn't build that battleship because it could be if you move that battleship along the board that that when Paris gets taken out, the guy that takes you out, which is probably Germany, gets to take your battleship. So I didn't trust him. So 3 battleships, 1 fast battleship, 2 fleet carriers, 2 escort carriers, 1 seaplane, 5 transports, 1 major factory, 1 medium factory, 2 minor factories. Now you notice there's no R&D weapons in there. There is no R&D allowed for the French in this game. I have a house rule where everybody rolls for a weapon at the start of the game, but that's not a normal rule, so don't worry about that. But just in case, like I have a couple of heavy tanks and a couple of advanced submarines, because it depends on, like what I do is I have a 16-sided dice, and so I roll, and whatever you land on, that's what weapon you get, right? Like if they got a heavy battleship, I probably wouldn't build it, but I put one on there anyway, just in case, right? But normally, though, you're not allowed to build R&D weapons, so you're not going to have to worry about putting those in for the French. It's just, and like I said, most of the numbers that I gave you are more than enough for the French. Doubt if you'll ever see 6 medium tanks, but you never know, right? That's why I put them in there. And you probably have that many. Now, what I do, this is the French set here, and I've painted them. You see they're a little bit darker color. Like you see this guy on the militia here. This guy is unpainted. So what I've done is with the old set of units that I had, I didn't paint them. I left them lighter color like this. And so when Germany does take over France, and then you roll to see who goes where with Vichy and with Free France, I replace the units on the board with these lighter color for the Vichy. Now that's completely unnecessary. You don't need to do that. It's just, again, me, like I like to play with Army Man, right? So that's what I do. I use the new units for France and for Free France, and the old units for the Vichy France. The only reason you see them on here now is because I also use the old infantry sculpt here for all of the militia on the board. So regardless of whether he was a Vichy militia or a French militia, same piece, right? Anyway, so where are we now? Geez, that was only 7 minutes. I think we could probably fit Italy on this video as well. Yeah, let's do Italy too. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so Italy. Italy plays a really interesting role in this game, just because like in Global 40, Britain takes the first shot at Italy, like punches them right in the nose. And so Italy kind of, okay, what do I got left kind of thing. But in this game, that doesn't happen because you're starting way before the war. Now, Italy can sit the entire game out without ever attacking anybody. And if they do that, if they don't attack any neutral territories, if they don't declare war on anybody, then nobody can attack them. So, it's kind of weird that way. And, like they could just sit there as long as they want and just build up units. But, actually, one of the things, one of the rule changes for V3 is that unless this is a typo, like in V2, in version 2, your starting income is 7 and your wartime income is 10. Whereas on the V3 sheet, it says that your starting income is 10 and your wartime income is 10. That might be a typo, I don't know. But if not, then Italy gets full money even if they're not at war, right? So be prepared for that. Now, what makes it interesting for Italy to do something like that is that they start with a pretty decent fleet here. Like they've got these boats here. They've got another submarine right there. There's a couple of boats down over here. That's a light cruiser and a destroyer over there, right? There's these boats which are on the build queue, battleship and a heavy cruiser and a sub. You can build a couple more. They start with 3 planes already. So there's 2 planes there and there's 1 there. I think I'm missing a plane. Hang on a second. Anyway, what that means is that they're actually, no, I'm not missing a plane. What it means is that there's, they're a threat, like they project a threat from there. So you never know what they're going to do, right? Like you could build a bunch of transports, you could put a bunch of guys on those transports, you could take your entire fleet, you could sit up beside England and do nothing, and then England, the British player, he's got to defend that, even though you're not at war, because at any time the Italians could declare war, right? So, I mean, they can declare war right in 1939 if they want, and just get right in there. That's possible too. So there's a lot of different things that you can do for Italy, and consequently, I've added a lot of units in this for Italy. The other thing is, they're right next to Germany, big brother up there. It doesn't take much to open a rail line. There isn't one open at the start of the game, but if you take out either, actually just Austria, I think. No, it looks like you have to take out Austria and Yugoslavia. No, just Austria. Here, let me just move that big factory there. Yeah, if you once you take out Austria, which you're going to do anyway for free, then you've got a rail line down to Italy. So once Germany becomes a beast, they can be feeding Italy units, right? Like you could only lend-lease up to half of the receiving country's income, which is not much. I mean, they could only lend-lease Italy 5 IPP then, right? But instead of doing that, you could also lend them 1 unit, and that could be a unit of any kind. So they could be lending them fighters or jet fighters, or depending on what's available, right? They could be lending them all kinds of stuff like that, 1 per turn, until Italy becomes a beast itself, and then away they go, right? One thing though, as far as ships, and I read this on Facebook, and it was Will that answered. Somebody had asked the question on the Global War 36 page on Facebook. They asked if Germany could lend-lease a battleship or a heavy battleship down to the Italians, and the answer was yes, but you couldn't take it along the rail lines, because how are you going to put a battleship on a railway, like especially a heavy battleship? Like that's an enormous battleship, right? So what you had to do is you had to go from a port, like from one of the German ports, down around and through here to get it to an Italian port. And to do that, of course, for one thing, Gibraltar had to be open, right? So if Britain owns this territory here, which they do at the start of the game, and quite often they do for the whole game, then you're not going to be able to get a ship through there, right, to lend-lease it. But as far as lend-leasing anything but ships, like you can just go down that rail line there, 2 spaces away. So you can make Italy a beast if you want to, that's for sure. And if you're playing Turkey at war and the Axis get Turkey, then Italy is the one that controls them. And you look at that, they're right next to them there, right? So there you go. Like Italy can do some serious damage in this game if they're played right. I often wonder what it would be like just to play Italy and that's it, right? Because then you could put the time into thinking about what you wanted to do. Usually they're an afterthought, right? Oh, it's Italy's turn. Oh, okay, well, I'll just buy this and put it on there because I haven't really looked at them. If you're the Axis player, you're probably looking at Germany and Japan. You're not really looking at Italy. But if you really had the time to think about it, you could do quite a bit with Italy. So let's get into what I put down here. Like I said, I probably gave it too much, but that's just because you could do this, right? But like I've got 20 infantry here. Like I don't see how you're going to get 20 infantry on the board around there, but it could happen. Like if they were to take out all the Middle East or something like that, or lots in Africa, you know, when they spread all the infantry out, then you might need that many. But you know what? If you've only got 15 Italian infantry, don't go out and buy 5 more. You're probably not going to use them, right? I'm just saying ultimately it'd be nice to have 20 infantry, 7 militia. Now only 7 because the Italians have black shirts, and we'll get to those in a minute. Here's an Italian black shirt right here. They're the same cost, and they're a militia unit, but they can move and they can attack. The regular militia here, they don't move, and they can only defend. But these guys can move, and they can move outside of Italy. You have to build them in Italy, but then after that, you can move them down to Africa and stuff. So what I'm saying is 7 militia here, and then anywhere between 5 and 10 black shirts. Like you'll want to buy these chips, right? These black shirt chips, or use some kind of other kind of chip to denote black shirts. But that's Italy's special weapon. So either buy 1 pack or 2 packs of those black shirt tokens that I'm using there. And then with the other things, there's like I put down 5 mountain infantry. Normally a small country like that, I wouldn't say so many, but you've already got 2 mountain infantry, and Italy is completely mountains, and there's mountains around there. Like if you're going to go over to here to Turkey, if you're going to go over to Yugoslavia, like that's all mountains down there. You're right at the Alps. So I figured just stick with 5 mountain infantry, even though they're a small country. 3 airborne infantry, 5 Marines, just because they got a lot of boats. 5 to 10 black shirts, like I said, 5 motorized infantry, 5 cavalry, 5 mechanized infantry, 5 light tanks, 10 medium tanks, 5 heavy tanks, 5 advanced mechanized infantry, 8 artillery, 5 advanced artillery, 5 to 10 AA artillery, 8 submarines, 5 advanced submarines, 1 transport plane, 2 to 3 medium bombers, 8 fighters, 8 tactical bombers, 3 strategic bombers, 3 heavy bombers, 3 jet fighters, 5 heavy cruisers, 3 light cruisers, 2 battle cruisers, 8 destroyers, 2 torpedo boat destroyers. Now with the torpedo boat destroyers, like here's one here, the only way you're going to get more is if you're playing the diplomacy expansion. Germany's going to get the units, like if one of the Allies or Russia attacked Yugoslavia, for instance, that torpedo boat destroyer is going to go to Germany. So Italy doesn't have much of a chance to pick up more units, and you only start with 1 torpedo boat destroyer, and you start with 3 coastal subs. So it's likely you're not going to use more. I would have, if you can, 1 more torpedo boat destroyer, just because there's a lot of neutrals on the board that have them. And then if you do go to play the diplomacy expansion, then you've got that option of adding them. And so throw 1 of those in and throw a coastal defense ship in. But if you don't have the money to get that expansion set, or that doesn't interest you, then don't worry about those other units, because there's no other way you're going to get them, okay? It's just the 1 torpedo boat destroyer and the 3 coastal subs that you start the game with. Lost my place. 5 tank destroyers, 3 self-propelled artillery, 1, I already got that. 3 battleships, like there's 2 already, so we'll give you the option of getting 1 more. 1 fast battleship, and there's actually a fast battleship in the build queue on the 1939 starting date. 1 heavy battleship, 2 fleet carriers, 3 escort carriers, 1 heavy carrier, 2 seaplanes, 5 transports, 3 attack transports, 2 major factories, 3 medium factories, and 5 minor factories. And that's the whole list. So even though they're a small country, I've thrown in a heavy carrier and a heavy battleship and stuff, because they are a sea power. Even though it's a minor sea power, they're still a sea power. Like I would rather build one of those things for these guys than I would for Germany. You know, like it just it's more likely that you'll get use out of it. Probably not much more than Germany, though. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't rank them up there with Great Britain, for instance. But if I was to build weapons, then I wouldn't be adverse to building ships for weapons, right? Like the heavy battleships or the heavy cruisers. So there you go. And also even the attack transports. So anyway, that's the whole list for Italy, and I'm going to cut the video off here because it's been going for a while, and I'm going to add this again to the what is it called, the playlist. And also I'm going to put the file for the list of stuff, all the list for all the nations of everything that you're going to need to build this game for yourself. Anyway, that's all I got for you in this video. Nothing left but the Chinese and the Americans. So take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.